Hello again, welcome to Atheist Edge. We're here today, it's me, Lance Bailey, with
Courtney.
and we're here with our guest,
Cindy.
Cindy, who is a recent convert at 2 years. Yeah,
Give or take. Yeah.
That's maybe not so recent for most of our people. But today we're going to talk with Cindy about her, what would you call it?
Deconversion.
We're going to talk to Cindy about her deconversion.
Yeah.
But we hope that some of the newer viewers get a lot out of Cindy's story. It's something that we all face, I feel like, as atheists. Courtney, actually, I've never talked to you about your deconversion story either, so hopefully, we can have a good talk today. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. We've got, I think we did a live chat with Steve McRae and Jim and I maybe a month ago. It's a long video, but that's my deconversion on there. So if they want to see that, they can probably link to it. But we can talk about it either way.
Well, I just, like I said, I've never heard yours, and I was just kind of teasing it out a little bit. But of course, we'd like to hear from Cindy. Like, well, I guess, when anybody might ask you about your deconversion story,
I would say it starts and ends with the Bible. So, I would ask what was your religious denomination?
Early on, I was a Catholic, and then didn't go to church for a long time, and then I was a Methodist, and then finally a Pentecostal type church.
Especially for, we're on audio, I think, but put some time frames on this, please. Like you went through a couple different religions,
Right.
so.
Well, I was a Catholic only when I was very little and had my first communion, I think they call it, and that's about it. Then we just stopped going when I was probably in elementary school.
Okay.
Then I don't think we really attended church except for Christmas and Easter for a while to make sure we hit those important, dates.
You get to punch cards.
Right, yeah. Then somewhere down the line in my teens, I became a Methodist for a few years, and then I actually drifted away from the church because I had heard about Abraham and Isaac in the Bible or read about it.
The story?
The story about
specific?
the story about him being willing to kill his son to prove his loyalty to God, and that story really, really messed with me. So shortly after that, I just kind of backed away. I never said I was an atheist, but I pretty much was.
This was early high school?
Yeah. No, well, actually, that's about my late teens. I'm sorry. So.
Yeah, okay.
Then I had my son about 5 years later, and for some reason I thought it was important to bring him up in the church, so I went back to a church that my dad was attending, and then I got saved again or something, and then
Sorry.
it's okay.
Aww.
It didn't stick the first time. So
No, apparently not.
yeah, and then what was I saying?
Sorry, late high school, into high school.
Okay. So yeah.
Well, yeah.
No, this is about
Your
25.
son.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, okay.
So I thought I'd bring him up in the church, and I rededicated my life or got resaved or whatever they want to call it. And I would have doubts, but I would just kind of push them to the side. And I didn't.
Would you have called yourself a believer in all of those
I
different
did.
denominations?
Not the Catholic one, no. But probably Methodist and Pentecostal, which is, of course, just under the Protestant umbrella, I think, right?
Yeah.
So.
We don't have to put too fine a point on it.
Yeah.
Years happened, and now things have changed in the last 2
Right.
years.
Well, it didn't change just 2 years ago. I finally figured out that what I was an atheist. I really just thought, well, I called it religious limbo. Like, don't know if it's true, don't know if it's not, I'm not going to care. And then I just started thinking about it, and then I started reading things, and then listening to atheists on YouTube, and I'm like, that's what it is. So my deconversion probably started about 3 or 4 years before I said I was an atheist.
Yeah, oh yeah, it takes a minute.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where do I go?
So, but what would you say started that?
Just a lot of doubts adding up. Other stories in the Bible, killing infants and just saving the virgin girls, killing the firstborn son to,
So kind of some of
punish somebody else.
I feel like you're seeing a lot of like the kind of what a lot of people would describe as like the evils of God, like things God was doing wrong, it's unacceptable,
morally corrupt. Yes, yes. Other things. Well, another thing about the Bible is like our pastor would, we'd have to repeat after him, whatever. And one of the verses, or one of the things we had to say was, "We believe the Bible to be the inerrant word of God." And I had stopped saying that at one point.
So
I was getting further and further away. Our church decided to read the Bible from beginning to end, either on the radio or YouTube or something.
Was it that like Bible in order of like not book order?
No,
like,
it would be book. They were going to do a book order.
Okay.
And so they wanted us to sign up for 20-minute segments. And I was at that point where I knew a lot of the Bible was horrible, and I didn't want to read those horrible passages. So that, all these things started adding up. Oh, and the fact that you can get the emotional high other places. You don't have to be at church.
Right.
I had an incident where I felt the same emotions, and I realized, okay, it's not God. It's it's just an emotion. Anyway.
So do you remember what that experience was that kind of felt
I was
the
at
same?
a Dallas Cowboy football game, and I'm not even into sports.
Right.
My son was in Pee Wee football, and I took him, and they had like this video before the game, and it was an emotional video. With the music, the crowd is, everybody's feeling that group, that emotion you get with a group, and I was like, this is like church. This is so weird.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So that was even like 14 years ago. So it didn't lead me away right then, but it was a spark,
Like it was growing. Like maybe the seed was like growing as you.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's. But now you've kind of, you're over the hump.
Yes.
You're
definitely.
now obviously it's still something like that. I really want to explore this topic of a new atheist has a lot of things they need to understand about the world. And I feel like I grew up very religious, and you said you maybe didn't so much, or you totally did?
Me, Courtney, yeah.
I
did.
I'm looking at Courtney.
Yeah.
No one can tell.
Yeah, this is Courtney. I was very religious, and it's really difficult to come out of thinking that there's a plan and that there's a purpose to your life, and that you have kind of that best friend looking out for you kind of thing, to leave that and kind of not have that support anymore. But it's also, for me, it was really liberating and exciting, because I had been waiting on a sign to kind of figure out who I was and where I was wanting to end up, and it was really difficult to feel like I had a direction in my life. And so when I lost that faith, I felt this really big weight of responsibility that, I have to figure that out now, but also this sense of capability that as a human being, I can do that. And before I didn't think that was possible. So it can be really scary to go through that transition, but once you do, it can be extremely rewarding for you. So Cindy, did you experience anything like what I talked about?
Loss of community? Because I got distracted. So you were talking about how you felt a loss of the sense of community?
Well, not community. For me, it was more about a loss of a sense of a purpose predetermined for me, that I didn't have to worry about becoming my own person.
I actually was very determined to figure out what I wanted to do in life at that point.
Yeah.
But
So you never felt. Well, what do you think about the idea that? And I'll just go ahead and be honest. I feel that this is a very big reason that religion is important to a lot of people, and even like Dallas Metroplex Atheist, or whatever the hell we call ourselves. What is it?
It's not Dallas. It's just Metroplex Atheist.
Oh, right. So like, I think even atheists have air quotes religious groups such as the Metroplex Atheists that.
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
I would.
I wouldn't call it a religious group.
No. But hold up. What I want to address about the feeling of community is, I think many religious people speak of their church only in terms of the sense of community about that church. And I think that's a reason a lot of religious people have a hard time getting over the hump, so to speak, into atheism. And I know that you have people in your life that you're kind of, I know exactly this feeling, trust me. I have never talked to anybody about my atheism unless they ask. But I'm like, as soon as they ask, I'm not going to mince my words. But I still think that there's a sense of community about, you know, the people who are in a church. It's hard to like be an atheist because you feel like you might lose that sense of community.
Right.
I know that that's affected you. I know that that's affected you, maybe only because it affected me and I'm projecting. But I think that that's still something that I hear in your voice about what you're concerned about. So what do you think? What would you want to tell yourself 4 years ago? What would now Cindy tell previous Cindy?
Well, 4 years ago, I was pretty much the same. I just hadn't declared I was an atheist yet. Earlier on, I would tell myself to really think about what you believe in. Do you really believe it, and not just take somebody else's word for it? Because I think that's what happens in church. People go, they're used to hearing the same thing year after year, so they think it's true. All these other people believe, so they think it's true. And where am I going with this?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Well, your sense of community.
Yeah.
I don't know how well,
that's what
oh yeah, because in group mentality, you want to be like the rest of the group. You want to fit in.
Yeah.
And if there's not meetups and all this other stuff, you know, there'll be a sense of loss of community for us, I believe. But you know, that's why I was glad to research on the internet and find groups. But even just knowing there's other atheists out there, even if you couldn't meet them in person, is, you know, a good thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you have a concept of non-believers when you were a believer?
Oh yeah, I thought they were maybe foolish. You know,
because
just kidding.
yeah, well, because for me, Courtney, I didn't. I had never really heard of it or thought of it, and so when I deconverted, when I lost my faith, I thought I was the only person in the world that had lost their faith. Like, yeah, it just didn't occur to me before that. So I'm always kind of curious to see what people thought of and if that affected their self-identity when they became an atheist. You know, if you kind of struggled with taking on that label because of your previous ideas about it.
not anymore, but
I guess that's that gap
when
between
I first
the 4 year and
doubted
the 2
early
year.
on, and then before I went back to the church, yeah, and so what was I saying?
You were talking about
Your concept of atheists before you were
Oh
one.
yeah, that they were lost and foolish, and you know, the normal thing is, well, why can't they believe? You know, they don't want to believe. You know, they want to. You know, but basically, I've realized that atheists are, you know, as different as believers are in some cases. But
absolutely.
yeah. I mean, it's not a. People associate atheism with Satan sometimes, and I'm like, no, we don't believe in Satan. How can we, you know?
Right.
I hear you.
Well, this has been Atheist Edge with Cindy, gracious enough to share her story with us.
Thank you.
And Lance leading us along, so that's always good. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Atheist Edge. Walking the edge of what some consider offensive. But your feelings don't matter here, only facts. Edgy commentary on the dangers of doctrine, the foibles of faith, the bullshit of belief, the stupidity of superstition, and the idiocy of indoctrination. With razor-sharp wit, curiosity, and critical thought, we take an unblinking look at today's religions. We are Atheist Edge.